Supervisor Kersten. Here. Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Item 4, the approval of agenda. We have a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Motion to
so
approve.
moved.
Support.
Trustee Link, supported by Treasurer Elliott. Deputy Knight.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 5, presentations. There are no presentations scheduled tonight. Item 6, department reports. Director O'Connor. Mitch, the podium is yours.
Good evening. May 20th is our DPS, Department of Public Services Open House. I want to invite everybody to show up. There are activities for the kids. There's a bounce house, a dinosaur dig. They can climb on the equipment. There's a magician there. It's the utility workers, facilities and operation, engineering and DPW. And it's at the Sierra office on May 20th.
Thanks, sir. And we'll advertise this on the page, social media page. Item 7, the consent agenda. I'm sorry. On Parks and Rec. Excuse me. Seasonal hiring. Chesterfield Parks and Rec Department is currently hiring for several positions. Positions are available for ages 16 and older. Seasonal jobs include summer camp, park staff, supervisor level positions. Contact at chesterfieldtownship.org to apply online. Also, summer camp will be hosted for 10 weeks of individual weekly camps from June 19th to August 26th. Weekly rates with multi-child discounts available. Registration begins April 10th, and space will fill up. Same thing, contact the parks at parks.chesterfieldtownship.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a brief update from the Public Safety team. Trustee Anderson and I met with the Public Safety Administrators for our monthly meeting on March 1st. We talked about several issues, and what I really wanted to share with the board is a few things. One, the Motorola Dispatch Radio project really is a massive undertaking, and these radios are so out of date, and we've talked about it for some time, and it's been part of the capital improvement, if you will, plan in the public safety team for some years now. Just done a magnificent job with Motorola trying to coordinate the rollout of this, and Motorola has done just a great job. They had a walkthrough probably 8 months ago to make sure that the equipment that they were bringing in matched our needs and was up to date and would carry us into the future for some time. There is some things that will be coming to the board soon regarding the way that the radios sort of coordinate with our existing IT infrastructure. We can expect to see hopefully somewhere in the neighborhood of around $50,000 needed to upgrade the IT to make it compatible with the upgraded radio system. So Director Bassett, of course, will inform us more comprehensively when we get to that point. The other issue that is worth noting has to do with the hiring and the staffing levels in the police department as well as the fire department. So Director Bassett, the administrative team, they're very far out in terms of talking with staff and making sure that we are reasonably or as aware as we can possibly be with regard to retirements and making sure that we're not, trying to bring somebody in. I know Trustee Demink, you, of course, and Hank and Supervisor Kersten. You have to go to the academy. There's a long process with bringing somebody on, and so to be as forward-thinking as our administrative team is really nice to see. Chief Miller is working to recruit part-time firefighters and will be attending Macomb, Oakland, St. Clair County Fire Academies this month. He will be talking with the academies and their recruits about Chesterfield Township and looking to bring them in. The other thing that Chief Miller talked about and advised us on is that Chesterfield will be hosting, fire department will be hosting an elevator rescue class certified by the state of Michigan. That actually took place here earlier this month, but the invitation was sent out to a number of neighboring departments, and it's consistent with our department's commitment to be a top-notch rescue team in all areas, whether it be trench, water, ice, closed confinement, cave-ins, elevators, you name it. We have really dedicated the resources in terms of equipment as well as training, and our firefighters are really tops in the state. And when Chief had the opportunity to host this elevator class, he invited all of our first alarm neighbors, is what they refer to them as, so New Baltimore, representatives from Selfridge, Macomb, New Haven, Lenox, were all invited, and it's consistent with being a top-notch rescue team. The dive team has received some new equipment, and it is designed to work in cold water. That training will begin in March. So pretty involved public safety meeting, and very proud of the team over there. They're very, very forward-thinking, and look forward to what they have lined up for us in the future. Thank you.
Can I just follow up again? To add on to the comments that you just made, recently there was a large fire response on Harrison Island, and our fire department sent a fire with 5 personnel, so that happened, I'm sure, through me. But again, shows the diversity that we're trying to get to with our fire service policy.
Yeah, I think just, again, we could talk for days on public safety, but the decision that was made some years ago as it relates to our fire department and the broadening of the relationship with MedStar, sort of rounding out our public safety team, really has allowed our firefighters to focus on these very technically driven rescues. They don't happen often, but when you're sharing resources with neighboring communities, somebody needs to take the lead in terms of making sure that all of the equipment is centralized and all of the key personnel who are educated and trained and certified in these advanced rescue techniques. And it is very awesome to see our township take the lead and be in a position to offer expertise, and not just with the certification and the training and that our people have, but also our township's dedication to the equipment. To have all of the necessary rescue equipment on one vehicle and be able to deliver that. Again, we don't have an everyday need for it in Chesterfield, but when we call on our neighbors, our first alarm partners, we're able to contribute back in the form of these very specialized rescue techniques and training and equipment. So just a great job on our fire department. I'm very, very proud of them.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion on any of the items is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. Item 7A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of February 28th, 2023, and approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Motion approved consent agenda.
Support.
Supported by Supervisor Kersten. Comments from the public? Comments from the public? Seeing comments from the public? Trustee United?
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye. Item 8A,
Item 8A, approve a request by the Parks and Recreation Department from Life Handicapped Outdoors to waive entrance fees for participants and site rental fees for organizers at Brandenburg Park on June 17th, 2023.
Support.
Thank you. Good evening, Board. Good evening, members of the community. I do want to take a moment for a brief presentation before we get to this agenda item to note a note of community achievement. The past 29 years, the Life Handicapped Outdoors has hosted an annual special needs fishing derby. For over 20 of those years, Life Handicapped Outdoors has chosen Brandenburg Park to provide this special community event to the Macomb County area. Louis Kaloya has been the lead organizer of this special community event since its beginning in 1994. Children and adults with both special needs in both mental and physical capacities benefit from this outdoor fishing experience each year. By our estimate, Louis has directly serviced and, dare I say, changed the lives of over 2,500 individuals with special needs, as well as their families that he works with. His work in coordinating several area agencies, including the Department of Natural Resources and the Macomb County Sheriff Division for this event, is impressive, to say the least. On behalf of Chesterfield Township, I invite Louis Kaloya to accept his award of community recognition for his work in Chesterfield Township with this event. Please join me in a well-deserved round of applause. It's the paparazzi.
I paid you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten. Aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Item 8B, approve a recommendation to install 8 additional security buttons in the amount of $6,860.
So moved.
Sure. So we currently have some panic buttons that report to our security provider. So what it does is when you hit that button, it goes to the security provider, and then the security provider has to call dispatch. Well, looking at everything, Supervisor Kersten, when we were reviewing this, these should report right back to dispatch. So we looked at the solution, and we came up with a solution which really, you hit the button, call goes right to dispatch. So then the existing buttons that are in place now will be replaced, and new ones will be added, including the community center, because we obviously plan on collecting money there, so it's a fantastic opportunity to put one of these buttons over there. So we are covering all of our counters where we meet the public or accept money. So that's what this is. It's basically just an upgrade and replacement for our existing buttons. You're welcome.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
And Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
To approve a recommendation to remove and replace 2 HVAC gas furnaces and an AC system at Brandenburg Park for a total cost not to exceed $19,500.
Support.
Second.
Yes, thank you again. This is at Brandenburg Park, as you know, we've done some renovations to the inside of the building. This was a planned replacement. It is in our capital plan. What we did is we put about $300,000 for upgrades at Brandenburg Park. We are piecing them out to make them make sense a little bit at a time. This is that unit, there's 2 units in that serve that building, and they're both approximately 20 years old. And what they did is, simple version is they put 2 furnaces to make it one, because the units they're too big to be one residential furnace and too small to be one rooftop unit. So they do what they call twinning. They put 2 furnaces together to service that building. It's worked for 20 years. It's pretty reliable. We plan on replacing it as is, and also the condenser on the outside. So we should be good for another 20 years.
Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Comments from the public? I have a motion by Treasurer Elliott, supported by Trustee DeMink, to approve item 8C.
Treasurer Elliott?
Aye.
Trustee DeMink?
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten? Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Item 8D. Mr. Supervisor, if I could just let you know, a couple of messages from your fans.
A couple of messages from your fans. Your voice is not being picked up in the microphone tonight. Yeah, and people want to hear you, so.
Talk a little loud.
Approve a recommendation by Public Services to award the Phase 1 CIPP lining rehabilitation of the Chesterfield Interceptor to the lowest responsible bidder, Form Technologies USA LLC, for the bid amount of $404,595.50, with a total project cost of $493,606.51.
We have a motion to approve. Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve.
Support.
Any support?
Support.
Treasurer Elliott, support. Mr. O'Connor?
Good evening. This sewer was TV'd and cleaned in 2017, then again in 2021, and rated in 2022. The pipes were actually rated based on that. This project will address the pipe that is closest to failure, soonest to fail. It was bid by the county in December of 2022. We will be taking over the project as the new owners of the sewer.
And yes, this is the newly acquired Chesterfield Interceptor that Commissioner Miller had presented to us, and this was the presentation of the most serious failures within that pipe. Just a side note, confirmation today that the remaining balance of $323,737.30 due to the township for lack of a better term, operation and maintenance, is the balance that is before from the county to the township. The total cost for this request eventually, when it filters out, is actually just a little over $160,000. And I have the finance director here tonight. If there's any immediate questions as to how these funds are transferred or how it looks when they come in, she's available for questions. So with that, I'll make it questions to the board. Trustee Joseph.
Not really a question, Mr. Supervisor. I appreciated talking with you about this a bit this afternoon. This is comfortably now known as the Chesterfield Interceptor for its entire life. It was the Macomb Interceptor. There's some of us on the board who really felt that this was an unfair liability that the township was, it was bestowed upon us. It was referred to as an asset, but typically when you got something that is millions and millions in disrepair, I was having a hard time understanding the asset. I voted against this and didn't feel that it was appropriate for us to take it on. It's here, so there's not really much that I can do except remind people every time there's this expense, and that seems futile. But the 325K that's being returned to us, when we began these negotiations and discussions, that number was 600K. And, you know, we're $250,000, I guess, into assessments, because what we had originally was a piece of pipe that was about $1.2 million in disrepair, and we know that that's, you know, not even close. So in order to find the new number, we spent $250,000 on engineering and assessing and, you know, more detailed, comprehensive review of every, you know, foot of that pipe. And so now we get 325K back. Voting against this just seems like it would be consistently, for lack of a better, it's just sour grapes, and I don't want to do that. It's in our portfolio now, and our residents will not accept, you know, well, I didn't agree with taking the pipe back, so I didn't vote to repair it, even though I knew it was in dire need of repair and, you know, at level 5 fill, you know, rate. So reluctantly, I'll be going along with these as we make the repairs to the pipe over the, you know, coming months and maybe years. So disappointing, but I realize it's ours now. So we I guess have an obligation to repair our pipe. So, thank you.
Mitch, this is from what, Cotton to 23? Is this that worst part, that area?
Yeah, it's south of 23, between 23 and 21 Mile Road. It's not the entire run of pipe.
Okay,
It's manhole to manhole. They've rated the pipes most likely to fail.
okay. So it's basically between 21 and 23, there's a section. That's
Yes.
the worst part of it.
Yes,
That's
yes.
where we addressed what we're going to work on first and get
Correct.
those sections repaired.
Correct, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This came up, this pipe was constructed, in the late 80s, serviced the north end of our township as well as Lenox, New Baltimore, or New Haven, and a regional prison. For 25 years, those other three entities used this thing, and then for the last few years, it's been Chesterfield's alone. County came here about 3 years ago or so and offered us this nice gift, and I think the figure was $1.2 or $1.7 million AEW repairs at that time. Then Treasurer LaFata, who met with the county, discussed it, came back here, and the board voted against accepting it at that time. I believe eventually it would be automatically transferred to the township in 2028. Came up here a couple weeks ago. Price tag of possibly, I think the county says $1 million or $11 million total. This is the first hunk of it. We're told that, hey, if it was built today, it'd be worth $50 million. Unfortunately, this township, residents are going to be in a hole or someone for about 11 grand when it's done. There's some creative math here. We're getting a hunk back on this. The former treasurer was talking about how there were like $600-some thousand a year that the township was paying to the county, and it's questionable what type of maintenance was done on it. I don't look at it as sour grapes. I didn't support it. This board, 3 years ago or so, there's a couple new members on it. At that time, they also did not support it at that time, taking it. I just can't see throwing good money after bad. Thank you.
Just some closing comments to help offset this. We have met with our state, federal, and local politicians through our lobbyist group. We've got some very positive meetings with them. There will be site visits in the coming weeks with those individuals, and we are looking for some offsetting funds to help us defer whatever the $11 million cost is, as similar to what we did with the Domain pump station. So we're positive outlook on this and try to limit the financial exposure in the repair side for this pipe in the coming months and years. With that being said, comments from the public.
Joe Kadich, live at 32825 Sutton. I agree with what Trustee Anderson and Trustee Joseph said. I still don't understand the reasoning that led the rest of the board to buy into this basically it's our money, it's not yours. Also, I sent you I guess there was an article in the, what was it, the Port Huron Herald, and the commissioner in St. Clair County had been talking to Macomb about tying into the sewer, apparently the one that's going to tie into this one that you're going to complete along 26 Mile Road. And it brought to mind, why was the rush to come over here and sell us or give us or shove this piece of sewer into us with all of the deeds that had to be done, all the repair that had to be done? Well, at the same time, apparently, our ex-supervisor, who probably had been dealing in this before, was dealing with the St. Clair County Board Commissioner about tying into the sewer. Now, we had nothing to gain by taking this on. Macomb had everything to gain. They offloaded a piece of equipment that needed a lot of work, $11 million work. They didn't compensate us for the money that was held from the construction of the sewer and was overpaid. There's a lot that happened here that is really strange, and I don't feel you people did your homework in going ahead and picking this up. You completely let this township down. There was no reason that we had to take this. You could have left to go, let Macomb County take it on, fix it, and then distribute the cost to the original people as well as us. I don't understand what prompted you to do this, other than the fact that it seems Zachavetti was involved in this too, trying to get what he wants, was to use our connection to Great Lakes water and sewer to get Clay Township and others to tie into it. No benefit to us, but it sure as hell benefited them to get rid of that sewer that needs $11 million. And what I would expect that you do now, you made the mistake, it's done, but at least look into it and see what should have happened. We used to call it postmortems when I worked. Look what went right, what went wrong, and so far as I can see, everything went wrong. Thank you.
John Speaka, 53978 Conner Drive. I was a no vote on taking possession of the sewer when the vote came up over a month ago. And the reason why I was a no vote is because this is not what I would consider a valuable asset. So it was projected in the way it was proposed to look like a valuable asset, but realistically, it's not a valuable asset. And it's not a valuable asset because it's going to cost the residents of Chesterfield $11 million plus by the time this is all said and done, with interest and everything else, because they're going to find other issues with this sewer, I guarantee you, when they get in there and start doing the repairs. So this was a bad decision by the 5 members of the board that voted for it, and it put an $11 million burden on this township that we can't afford. So it's a huge stress on this township. Our attorney, Mr. Seberg, excellent attorney, counsel, was asked an opinion that night. And Mr. Seberg's opinion, basically, and I'm summarizing, was if we take possession of this sewer, then we don't have anything to fall back on. We can't go to Lenox, we can't go to New Haven or the regional prison to try to get a percentage of when they were tied into this sewer paid from them. So at that point, Chesterfield's all on their own. I mean, we have legal counsel sitting up there. We pay for legal counsel. I just don't understand why we don't take legal counsel's advice when he gives it. It was good, solid, sound advice to this board. And basically, Mr. Seberg said, listen, if you take this possession of it, you're done. You got nothing to fall back on. The residents are gonna be stuck flipping the bill, and that's exactly what happened. So this was not a good decision, and I understand that 5 members of the board, with the exception of Mr. Anderson and Mr. Joseph, that voted against taking possession of the board, voted for it. So again, I've seen this board come together when, you know, we need to do what's, you know, what's right for the residents, not who is right, but what is right. This board has come together for that. So this was another instance here that we needed to do what was right for the residents, and unfortunately, that didn't happen this time. So, and I agree, now we own this sewer line, and we're gonna have to make the necessary repairs. Even though I disagreed with how it went down and us taking possession, we own it, we have to pay for it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 8D. Deputy Nysa.
Supervisor Kersten,
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott,
Aye.
Trustee Demink,
Aye.
Trustee Joseph, Trustee Anderson.
No.
Item 8E.
Item 8E, request by Public Services to award purchase orders to East Jordan Supply in the amount of $25,000, Aetna Supply in the amount of $55,000, and Ferguson Supply in the amount of $120,000 for the purchase of repair supplies and water meters in 2023.
So moved. Motion by Trustee Demink, supported by
Support.
Treasurer Elliott. Floor is yours.
Good evening. Department of Public Services received bids for sewer and water repair supplies and water meter pricing in January of 2023. The pricing and supply list was based off the most commonly used repair supplies that we tend to go through in a fiscal year and what we expect to go through for the water meters in 2023. We solicited from local vendors, the vendors that we typically buy our repair supplies from, in order to be able to get the lowest possible price and then lock that price in for the 2023.
Any comments from the board? Questions from the board? Trustee Joseph.
These are necessary pieces of equipment that have to be part of meter install, and in a lot of instances, it's not like you can just go over to Lowe's and pick up a box of them. These are kind of complicated in a lot of instances, and they come from specialty suppliers. I've always approved these because they just seem like a routine part of the job, but they're massive hunks of brass in there too, that have value for like non-meter installations. And so I've always wondered, what is our accounting system, and do we have now with BS&A the ability to track all of these pieces and all of the hardware so that we can see this order went out and had 16 meters in this neighborhood or at this address. Do we have we noticed an increase in terms of being able to account for all of these expenditures over the years now with the addition of BS&A, and could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, with the new BS&A software, it does give us a much easier way to be able to track from the purchase orders from when we originally put the purchase order in to all the way through when the invoice comes and it's paid. It's definitely gives us a better tracking. We can also then run reports based upon each vendor and how much we spent with them each year, which was part of what I used in this one as well, to look back what we spent at each of the 3 vendors that we chose last year to try to help base what percentage we'd want to put for each one. So we do have a lot more tracking and reports that we are able to do with new BS&A software.
So in your packet presentation, there's 85 pages with all of the different vendors and each and every piece that we're buying highlighted with a per unit price. It's a very comprehensive, very thorough Just a short, your feeling on, could you use BSNA to be as detailed in terms of being able to look back, say, in 2024 and account for, X number of meter couplings, 1-inch meter coupling, 2-inch copper washers, and so, are we detailing on the installs, a pretty good accounting system with our new BSNA?
We definitely have a way to be able to track it. I'd have to look at some of the reports we can run, but I would say that, yes, there should be a way we can run those reports. We also keep a very detailed inventory list as well on our own, so we know how many parts are going in and out and what jobs are going out on.
Okay, I'll just wrap with this. I think probably what I'll do is give Josh a call or Mitch, and I want to talk to you a little bit about this further, because we have in the past had, massive purchases for different things, and then, we're trying to do a job and maybe we're short this or short that, and I'm curious to know what goes into, obviously a lot, and, when you have an 85-page, documentation packet to accompany the request, somebody's putting some thought into it. I'd really like to know on the back end, like, maybe talk about the 2022 expenditures. It seems like we're deep enough into 2023 to know where all that went, because these are very, very costly things, and they're necessary, and you can't really do anything without these purchases. But I wonder how well we're tracking it, and I'll take that outside of the meeting and just follow up, because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
I can say that the list that we had provided there was just an accumulative list of what we have typically purchased, so that way we could give our vendors the best chance to be able to give a competitive pricing, and give us the best chance then to be able to see, based upon that large, it is a large list, but based upon that large list, now we can narrow down that this vendor here we know has a better price for copper. So moving forward for this year, we're going to have our guys go and purchase copper through, which would be the Aetna Supply, and we found that they have the best pricing when it comes to copper. So that's why the list is so cumulative. We wanted to give them the best opportunity to be able to give us their best comparative bid.
Thank you. Further comments? Comments from the public? Any comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. I have a motion by Trustee DeBink, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 8E. Deputy Nyza.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Item 9, public hearings. There are none. Item 10, addendums. There are no addendums to this. Item 11 is public comments. Public is welcome to come to the podium. You have a 5-minute time limit. If you would, for the record, please state your name clearly so we can maintain, document it in our records for us. Public comments is open.
Okay. Mike Rayner, 26175 Jack Grove Lane. I'm here to talk about the appearance of Chesterfield Township. Last spring, I had an opportunity to take part in a cleanup. It was kind of interesting because I saw it on Facebook, and there was well over 100 people showing an interest in doing this cleanup on 23 Mile Road. So I thought, I'm not busy, I'll do it tomorrow. And so I went to Jillian's, who had volunteered to do this, only to discover that out of all of these positive comments, well, not exactly positive, I was the only one that volunteered. So it was me and 4 of their employees, and so we cleaned it up. So in the process of doing so, there were many comments made with those responses, and many of them were talking about how trashy the place looked. And when we cleaned up 23 Mile Road, yeah, it was trashy, all right. It looked very, very bad. And one of the things that were mentioned was the condition of the bus stops. So I won't go into it, but I think some of you know that I took it upon myself to try to improve the bus stops. And that's kind of another subject. But in the process, I discovered that as I did that, and I hit all of the active trust bus stops, which I think were about 10 of them that actually were being used, I found out that the area that I cleaned up was the clean area, and everything else, yeah, really looked pretty bad. So as I looked closer and closer, I thought, wow, that is really, you know, an issue here. And so I started talking about it, and I found out that there is maybe it's an ordinance, I don't know exactly what the description is, but from the center of the road, 61 feet to the property is responsibility of the county or whatever, and then it's the business owner. So I couldn't believe, and I dropped off a few pictures. I mean, I used to run retail stores, and I used to always clean up around my store because, I mean, it's my store, you know, and it sits on this property. So a lot of these businesses, I mean, they take care of the inside of their business, but there's junk all over the place. So I think we have an opportunity to remind those businesses that it's really their responsibility to clean up that area after that 61-foot business. Basically, it's the sidewalk that kind of determines, you know, that line of demarcation there. And so I would like to suggest that we reiterate to the business owners, I'm sure it would be helpful on our Facebook page and our website and all that, that, hey, look, this is really your responsibility, and we're really not too happy with the way many of these areas are looking. And with spring coming, the thought also is, what if we have, you know, we always have spring cleanup, right? So maybe we can kind of kick this off by having a spring cleanup event. Because if you drive up and down, especially this morning, I was looking a little bit more, and a lot of these areas are where the traffic lights are. So at the railroad tracks, there's all sorts of stuff there, so you have to wait. It's a long light anyway, and then you have a train, and so everything's thrown out your door onto the side of the highway. So I think we should make an effort, especially the business owners, because it's their responsibility, but even groups like the Boy Scouts, who I'm using to help maintain the existing authorized bus stops, to clean those up. So I'd like to think that we would have a little more responsibility and a little more pride in Chesterfield Township by getting out there and cleaning the place up. So I would like to see greater participation and some ideas on the most effective way to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Further comments from the public?
Joe Kadich, live on Sutton. I hate to get back into this, but I'm really unhappy with the way the whole sewer intercept thing went down, and you picked up the cost for everything and let everybody else off the hook. And I looked at where the money is coming from, and basically all it said in your project that it was 2024. Now, I haven't seen a 2024 budget, and I don't see any money that's going in toward that. And I wonder, there's money, you got what, 4.8 million from ARPA funds? And you spent, I think, 1.1 million, I think 700,000 for the launch ramps at Brandenburg, and 400,000. Would it have to do something with the sewer department? Or were you basically eliminating running around with a car and picking up the meter readings? So that means there's about 3 million something left. Why don't you apply that? In fact, why don't you publish what's out there and what you think it should be spent on, and let the public enter in onto it? That's the way most communities are doing. In fact, that came out when the commissioner from St. Clair County went around. He was trying to line up all the townships to take their ARPA funds to make that sewer along 26 Mile Road. And if you look at what the directions are, whatever you want to call it, that comes with those, they recommend, the two things that they recommend are things that gives long returns on it. And they recommend either sewer lines, water lines, or basically the lines for an internet. Now, you've not said anything about where that money's going to be spent. You've not said anything how much has been capitalized and already spent or assigned and spent. I think you owe it to this township to sit down and say, here's what I think it should go, and let them say, maybe we should put it someplace else. But to pick up the sewer and all of that luggage that comes with it and not use ARPA funds, at least to take some of that burden off the public, because we're going to end up, all the ratepayers are going to end up paying for that one way or another. And to sit there and have ARPA funds there and not use them when they could be used to take some of that burden off, I think it's a shame. Thank you.
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. Again, the ARPA funds are our money, the residents' money. So I'd like to see a meeting, and I'd like to hear from the residents on how they want their money spent. I can tell you right now, out of the gate, that the majority of the residents that I've talked to want sidewalks in this township as a top priority. So spending, some of that ARPA fund for sidewalks would be an awesome idea. My opinion, I think with the giveaways in this township, I think we're done with the giveaways. I think we're done with giving the wealthy and well-connected free sewer lines, and I think we're done with caving into the county on everything they want. So, because every time this board caves, and every time these members, this board caves and gives the wealthy and well-connected free sewer lines, the residents lose. The residents always lose. So that sewer line that we talked about is a $11 million repair, and then that free sewer line on the north end that's being developed is roughly an $8 million sewer line. Want to thank the board at the last township meeting. And we had a good meeting at the last meeting. So this board came together and, as Trustee Joseph would say, didn't focus in on who was right, but what is right. There was no name calling. There was no mudslinging. Everybody, for the most part, got along, came together, and did the right thing. So I would like to see more of that out of this township board, working together and working with the residents, not against each other. But I mean, in retrospect, there were only 5 members here. So, and with the 5 members, this board was able to progress, move along, and do what is right for the residents. And again, there was no mudslinging, no name calling, no intimidation. So it was, mutual respect. So it was good to see that even though we have our differences, that we can come together and work together for a common cause and do what's right for Chesterfield and for the residents. So I wanted to thank the board because I haven't been able to say that or thank you guys, because it was the first time that I seen that, and I'd like to see more of that, though. I was impressed, but again, we didn't have a full board here, so with the 5 members that we had, with the exception of Cindy Berry not being here and Mr. Demink gone, I mean, the board worked great together. So again, I thank you. And again, when we're spending the township's money, we have to look at every penny and every dime right now, because we're gonna be on harder financial times than we are today. So nobody knows which way the market's going to trend. And the economy right now looks like it's going to hold steady, but not to where we were a couple of years ago. So again, let's, be very careful and frugal on how we spend the taxpayers' money, and let's try to put something forward for the residents as far as the ARPA funds, and let's get moving on this sidewalk program, because the last thing I want to see, I see a lot of kids, we're getting into the summer months now, riding their bikes, walkers in the community walking. The last thing we don't want anybody getting hit or hurt. And we're 30 years behind on this sidewalk thing, so it's time for us to play catch up and start moving forward and getting the job done. And I also agree with Mr. Rayner on, keeping the community clean. What I would like to see is maybe we can put a volunteer group together and have a group of volunteers on a certain day during the week or get together and assist in keeping, our community clean. So I think it's important when people come through Chesterfield, they look and, they want to see, our appearance of our community is important, and I'd like to keep it.
Time's up.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? I'll bring it back up to the board. Trustee Demink? Well, one crack at it. Trustee Demink?
Just like to shout out to the fire department for the assist they did. I heard it was a big job. They grabbed the boat out of the PD and dropped it in over at Rosso and ran across the bay and fought that fire with Clay Township and the other departments, getting over there, over to the old club, which is a very old and distinguished place. So kudos to the guys and the chief and everything, getting everything together and get over there. And that's all I have. I was on vacation last week, so that's why I was not here. I think that's the first time I've missed a board meeting in several months. And Mr. Speaker, with regards to your comments, I'm not even going to address them. It's not worth my time.
Trustee Anderson?
Thank you. On the public safety end, our police department's done some outstanding job in a couple incidents in the last couple of weeks here, as far as residents that are really distraught, and they were able to handle them successfully without any injuries to any parties involved. The Chesterfield Interceptor, and formerly known as the North Gratiot Interceptor, it would become property of the township in 2026, within 3 years. Some remarks here. I don't consider my no vote as sour grapes. I'm more interested in representing the residents and not the county in these matters. Finally, today is Pi Day, 3/14, for you math people. Keep working on that equation. And tomorrow's the Ides of March, so just kind of watch where you go. If there's any parties out there celebrating it, let me know. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph?
Thanks, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Demink, you said you weren't going to address those, but I will. As I kind of chuckled at one of the observations that was made, that somehow you not being here made the board run a little more smoothly, and I'm not sure where the speaker was going with that, but I want to say, if you had been here, you would have probably responded to me. I was frustrated about some things with the Planning Commission, and I don't think I articulated them in the way that I should, and it could have been more fireworks from my doing. And, I appreciate you accepting my apology. I was able to call you. We were able to talk it through. And I've always found that to be the case with you. No matter the frustration, no matter the issue, no matter what words are said, I've always accepted your call. You always accept mine. And, we work it out through some very ugly things over the years. And I respect you and I appreciate you. And most of all, when I go outside of the path and I get a little too much, you've been gracious enough to accept my apology, and we just move on. So I never found your presence here to be, contributing to, mudslinging or disrespect. I I don't know what to say with regard to Clerk Berry. I haven't seen her since she made a strong pitch to the board about how they were working their fingers to the bone over in the clerk's office, and nobody's seen her in a month. So when she does return with that initiative to hire significant more staff, I hope she includes herself in that FTE equation and puts her 40 hours in so that we can get a good assessment of what's needed in the clerk's department. But that said, I hope she's well. The comments regarding the sewer and the first sort of bulk payment that's made to repair it, I apologize to you. I didn't mean to refer to a no vote on that as sour grapes. I was just trying to convey basically the same frustration that you have with regard to how we acquired the pipe or reacquired the pipe or took it over earlier. The argument for not doing that was made and remade and debated and redebated, and the attorney doesn't get to respond to the public, but the characterization of his legal opinion, there was an opinion that was given to the board many years ago when this issue came up, and the opinion was based on the idea that the township had not was not necessarily entirely obligated to the entire repair bill because we had been paying all along for depreciation and maintenance on that pipe. That was the belief when that opinion was made, and it was a much deeper dive over the last several years, and in fact we have sort of reevaluated that position and that we had not been paying depreciation for that time. So that was at least one element of why we shouldn't take the pipe that needed to be revised. So there were other issues, and the one that we got hung up on, that I got hung up on, was the number of other municipalities that had shared in the use of that pipe during its working life. During its most pristine time, there were a lot of entities using that pipe. Now that the pipe has been neglected and is in need of repair, the Macomb interceptor became the Chesterfield interceptor, and I thought there was a better path to lay out our arguments as to why we're not required to pay the full $11 million, that it should come from other municipalities. But I envision having this same discussion every time we get presented with a new repair. And for me, I just, even though I didn't vote for it, the board spoke. The board accepted this deal. It is part of our portfolio, and therefore I believe we're required to maintain it to ensure that the residents are serviced properly. So that was my yes vote. It is not an enthusiastic yes vote, but I apologize for referring to anybody that saw it differently as sour grapes, because that's certainly not the case. I also wanted to share with the board a letter. Just received this letter from Miss Allison Bertle, and she wasn't able to make the public hearing on the CDBG funds back on 2/14, and she indicates in her letter that she believes the worthy causes were represented and that it is reasonable to consider helping those organizations who service low and moderate income Chesterfield residents. But she was disappointed and indicates that the lack of citizen participation, and that she asked me to accept her public comment by mail. I can't really do that. The clerk is the official receiver, but I look at her correspondence to me as individualized and to me, and I just wanted to share with the board what she felt would have been a better utilization of those funds, would have been money used to rehabilitate non-residential structures, and she talked a lot about Brandenburg Park and her desire to see the pavilions and picnic tables and so forth. She also felt that the leveling and landscaping and planting of grass was necessary. And then she mentioned some of the other things that I think were really talked about in a beautification committee kind of way, and that there are areas in the township that could use, some maintenance. all of her points are very well made. It's just that if she were here and we could talk to her about it, I would tell her that the CDBG funds are very narrow in their scope in terms of what they can be utilized for, and that if a nonprofit came to the board during the consideration of those funds and made a compelling case, but this cannot be folded simply into the general fund or used in a way to assign, say, a maintenance crew or a cleanup crew that was just dedicated to these beautification issues. So I hope I answered Ms. Bertel's question, and I hope to see her at meetings making her case in person. The last thing I wanted to say tonight is I wanted to just make a public comment to our law enforcement officers and recognize some of the difficulties that go unnoticed most days. And for those of you who have retired from law enforcement, I'm not telling you anything new, but there are experiences that occur on the job that are very difficult from an emotional and a mental health standpoint. I've had a number of very close friends who deal with some of the most traumatic events and heart-wrenching situations. It's not just, catching bad guys. It's sometimes being on the scene of an accident or dealing with somebody who's the victim of a violent crime. And 1 minute they're at the scene and it's chaos, and there's first responders and medical people and life-saving efforts. And then within an hour or two, your shift is over and you have to join your family at your kid's recital, or go home to a family event where all of your relatives are there and they're celebrating a birthday or Thanksgiving, and your mind is still on a traumatic scene where somebody's life was lost or somebody's life was taken. And it is an incredible level of stress and trauma that is absorbed by these really heroes that go out and put themselves on the line, not just their physical safety, but their mental health. And sometimes it takes its toll to a point that people's personal lives suffer. I think there's reams of data written about the impact of law enforcement work on officers and their significantly higher divorce rates and suicide rates and alcoholism rates, and you realize how difficult it is to be a police officer in this world today, and it gets increasingly more difficult every day. And I mention that only because we have at least one officer who's really struggling right now, and I don't want to get too deep into it because it's a complicated matter, but I want to say to that officer and every officer out there that this board supports you 100%, and every effort to make sure that we take care of the people that take care of us is paramount on my mind and on the minds of many of the board members here. And we're going to do everything we can to find an equitable resolution for not only that officer but the entire department. There are a lot of members of our department that are looking to the leaders in this community to say, how are you going to stand with and how are you going to help us when the world comes crashing down around us? And it's a very difficult thing for the leaders in this community, because we also have to make sure that without regard to intent, without regard to how somebody became, very struggling and very much in a struggle of their life, are they appropriately, out there and able? Do they have the necessary requirements to take on these, very traumatic and difficult decisions on a day-to-day basis without getting themselves hurt or their coworkers hurt or residents hurt? So it's a very difficult challenge. But ultimately, and in speaking with Supervisor Kersten today, I think that we're going to try our best as leaders to make sure that we create a place for our officers and any township employee who finds the rigors of the job very, very overwhelming, and their mental health is suffering and they need help. We're going to be there for them, and I think we have an obligation to be there for them. And I just wanted them to know that I'm thinking of that, not only that individual, but our entire department as they rally around these challenges. And I'm there, and this board is there with you. So thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Treasurer Ellie.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you, Mr. Rayner, for starting the night off with the theme, the public comments and the board comments. And you said you wanted, the gist of your conversation, your comments was to take pride in our community. And I think there's a theme, whether it's talking about the sidewalks, possibly getting together and developing a volunteer group, or you know, like you did, you joined a volunteer group and got out there and just made a difference, right, wherever you possibly could. And each person, in taking pride in your community, it would be taking and looking at the sidewalks, picking up the garbage. It is making a difference. And it's also, for this board, is making hard decisions, tough decisions. Maybe the interceptor has been a big, tough decision for this board. And unfortunately, it's, as we've seen and we've heard over and over again, the cost of that, as we keep kicking it, arguing, and over the years, is to me, the arguing over the years has increased the cost of repairing something that this board has a responsibility to take care of for the residents who would be directly affected by that if it were a sinkhole. And that is why I have had to make that tough decision. And it is unfortunate that it continues to be an argument and a point of arguing over, when the reality is it's the residents of Chesterfield who would be in serious have serious problems, like we saw on 15 Mile. And it is an unfortunate thing that we have to continue to argue about it. And it is costly. And when I first walked into here just over 2 years ago, the price tag was a lot cheaper. But then during COVID and different things that happened, you saw that price tag go up. So as we keep kicking that down the curb and down the road, you would see that price even go up more. So at some point in time, you have to just say, enough is enough, let's get it fixed. And that is why I did support that, and I will continue to stand behind that decision. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to make some quick comments myself. In regards to the comments about the 26-mile road pipe and the Chesterfield interceptor and what St. Clair County is going to do and what IRA may do, there's mass confusion over that. That narrative is completely wrong. What I would ask that you do is reach out to Mitch in our engineering department. He may be able to set you straight on exactly what is happening there. But the confusion of all of those projects into one, that's the wrong narrative, and you have the wrong advice and direction. In regards to the township appearance, we do have a beautification committee. We've tried to resurrect it here and get public participation in as much as we can. Anyone interested in that role or that participation level for the township, please go to our website. There's a place where you can volunteer and join the beautification committee. In regards to an email I sent to the entire board here this week, the 23-mile road reconstruction expansion project has been expanded. It is now from Gratiot to Fairchild Road. I was notified this week by the Department of Roads that project expansion does come with a community cost sharing increase, a substantial increase. So we will have to look at that and figure out a way to financially fund that. That is part of a TIP program, which we received federal funding for, and we did make that request some years ago. But again, that email was sent to the entire board, and if you would, I'd love to have your input and direction and thoughts on that. Meeting with our lobbyist group, Midwest, they're doing a great job for us. As I stated earlier, we've met with several state, local, and federal elected representatives, and several projects within the township have been spoken about with much support from the county executive's office, Candace Miller's office, and then obviously our local commissioners and reps. We are seeking several community funds from our elected partners at the state and federal level, and there will be site visits that are already being scheduled for our community. We like to tour them around. and give them an idea of what we are facing. And the Chesterfield Interceptor $11 million request is part of this, and so far we've got very positive verbal feedback and support from these, our elected representatives. Also, just a note of what's coming in the future board meetings. We have several projects that have been in the pipeline, particularly renovation projects. The police department parking lot, a renovation plan there. The fire department on Jefferson, a solution for that spot with some ideas and concepts of moving forward there. And also here within the township offices, there's an extensive need for renovation and at least overhaul and repurposing of space. Those plans, board-approved architectural and concept designs, we're at that. We've received those. We'll bring it back to the board and look for input on moving forward with all three of those projects. Public notice, the Washington Bridge, New Haven Road Bridge at Baker Road. They have begun the reconstruction of that bridge. That will be a complete closure in the coming weeks. As you know, it was closed partially this last week for tree clearing. And also, again, that road will be completely closed to the public, which is going to impact surface streets, particularly Baker North and South. The sewer project has also begun on Baker Road, which is going to, hopefully that'll be a quick interruption in services for Baker Road. One last request that you're going to see in the coming week to the board is a automated suite of time and attendance, automated payroll system technology for the entire township. A group met with one of the vendors today that interfaces with BSNA. Pretty positive. It's going to be a substantial upgrade and modernization of our time and attendance. And I know that being familiar with public safety, we had one over there for over 20 years. I'd like to get the township up on it along with the DPW. So that presentation's coming in the recent months. Go ahead. That's all I have for tonight. With that being said, I'll take a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
8:15. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned, 8:15. Thank you.